Yeah, as we've sort of touched upon in the last just few minutes while chatting away, we're to talk about junior data professionals, how they're the key to every data team success and what they can sort of bring. I do want to just give a quick shout out to New Stars of Data that they're giving us this opportunity to talk in our first public forum. It's very exciting for us, and I think it's very exciting for them as well. So just a big thank you to them. I want to start today with a very quick story. We will be telling a few stories today, but mainly about us. But this first story is actually about a guy called Chris. Chris is a person that works with us. He's a BI developer, works with stakeholders and people like that, creating pretty graphs and dashboards and working with data as well. But a few years ago, Chris wasn't a BI developer. A few years ago, Chris was actually a barber, cutting hair, and that's how he made his money. And then this lovely gentleman walked in called COVID-19, had a huge impact on his life as it did many, many others. And it meant Chris could no longer be a barber. And so Chris found himself at this crossroads thinking, what do I do now? What do I do with my career? You know, I can't be a barber. What do I do now? So he took to Google, went onto Google saying, what's out there? What's on the boom at the moment? And obviously data being amazing as it is, top of the list. So Chris did a bit more research and he found there's actually a lot of courses out there that can teach the basics of data in quite short courses. And so he signed up for one. And it was a 3-month course teaching him the basics of data analysis, data engineering, using a lot of different languages, Python, SQL, R, you know, the very quite basics to the foundations of data. And he learns all of this, and after 3 months, he gets a lovely little certificate, and it says, "Hey, you are now a data professional." And Chris is jamming about it. He's really happy. However, he's looking at his certificate, and he's found, I'm at this crossroads again. What do I do now? I've got the certificate. Now what? How do I get into the data industry? And funnily enough, the people that were teaching him, the college, sort of online college that were taught him, there was an instructor role going. So Chris signed up for that. And within the next few weeks or so, he became an instructor, teaching people like he was taught, teaching them these languages, these techniques. And he did that for about a year or two. And in that time, he taught about 100 different people, these 100 different people that went out and they've got their own stories in the data industry, data community. And so he's opened up that network. And then one day, an old student came up to him and said to him, "By the way, Chris, I've got this job opening at my company. I think you're going to be a perfect fit. I think it would really excite you. Are you interested?" And Chris was like, "Yeah, of course. Sign me up. I want to get into data. Give me something." Hands his CV into the company, goes through the interviews and all the processes, and surprise, surprise, the seniors in the team loved him so much. Chris told them his story, showed them what he could do, that he was an instructor, taught all of this, and only bearing in mind this is a small period of time we're talking. You're talking 1 to 2 years, you know, in the grand scheme of being a barber to now being part of the data industry. So the seniors loved that about him, and so they gave him the job, and that's where he is now. And that's where me and Abby met him, because he works in the same team with us at Quorum. And I just want to, when we're talking in this presentation, just to keep having a reflection on Chris and that story, because I think it really shows that the way juniors are really coming into data now, that everybody has their own story. You know, not everybody starts as a barber, but you can come from all these different backgrounds and get welcomed into this community and industry. So I'm going to throw it back over to Abby, who's going to talk a bit more about what we're going to be talking about in this presentation. So Abby, take it away.
Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, totally. So there is a reason that we told you the story of Chris. It's not just to big him up in front of an international audience. We really feel that it is a special story because, yeah, within a couple of years, Chris has shown that he's determined and passionate to learn and pick up this new career in data. And he's gone from a barber to a BI consultant now. That's quite catchy, that phrase. And we thought it really shows how people are getting into the data industry these days. It's not everyone that's coming in with a technical background these days. It's changed quite rapidly, but I think you'll find that there's plenty of people like Chris that are looking for jobs in data at the moment. But at the same time, equally, there's plenty of companies out there that are looking for people to work in data, and they're actually struggling to find the people. And I think it's a term that a lot of people will be familiar with now. I think we were even just referring to it at the very start there. with William, we were talking about the skill shortage. You know, companies are racing to hire people that have got the core data skills required because they're really just finding that there's not enough people that are especially senior in the industry that have got the skill set that you need to be able to deliver client solutions with data and so on. And it's something that's affecting the wider IT industry. It's not just our data industry. So to put it into a bit of context for you, there was a study carried out by the UK government in 2019 to talk about what the skill shortage, what the landscape was looking like just within data, because it was still quite on the rise and it still is kind of heavily expanding as an industry within the UK and within the technical sort of the technical market. So they found that there was about 200,000 roles that are being advertised all over the UK. I think the exact figure is around 234,000 roles. And they found that these are the jobs that are looking for core data skills across junior and senior levels, just across the board. And when I say core data skills, I mean, yeah, someone that has experience working with real data, implementing real solutions. And they found that the companies that were advertising for these 200,000 roles, they found that it was actually about half of the companies within the UK looking for these technical people. And I think that just shows the magnitude of how important data is now, how important, how companies are now understanding how important data is and how things like data analysis and all these sort of solutions that we can build are really going to benefit them in the long run. But they also found that around 46% of the companies that were looking to hire data people were really struggling to fill those roles. You know, they might be finding people that aren't the right fit. They're not finding people with the right skill set. And they're really struggling to find people that can fill the roles that they're after, but also just to try and expand their data team. Because as I said, data is on the boom right now. I've heard people compare it to oil. I've heard people say data is the new oil in the 21st century. And I think it really goes to show how important it is to have people that have, how difficult it is to find people that actually have the skill set already. But I think how important it is to try and develop those skill sets within your team, trying to hire people that you can sort of mold into that sort of role. And whenever we say junior in this whole talk, we don't mean junior in age. We don't mean people that are fresh out of university, college, school, or whatever. We're always going to mean people that are junior in experience, because you do have people that are coming into jobs in data with no technical background. And I think Taylor, yourself and myself, we're quite relatively new to the industry as well. We've only got a little experience, but it's still fresh in our minds. And I think that's what really motivated us to deliver this talk today, because we felt, you know, there's plenty of career development sessions that are spoken about at conferences. You know, they're fantastic sessions given by people that are been in the industry for 25, 30 years, and they've got tons of wisdom. They're talking about how to perfect your CV, your soft skills, your interviews. But Taylor and I, we sat back and we thought, there's a perspective that we have on this. We can really give like a fresh perspective on this career development talk. And I'm going to be a little cheeky. I'm going to say, you know, it's an older part of the community that's doing the talks because they've got the 30 years of experience or whatever. I think Taylor and I thought it'd be a pretty good idea if we came in and we could just totally spin it around and just talk about our own experiences. So without further ado, I'll introduce ourselves. My name's Jayanty. I'm a junior data engineer at a company called Quorum. We're based in Edinburgh in Scotland. I think in the chat earlier they noticed that it's a very Scottish heavy session, and yet we're trying to take over the industry, certainly. And I, funnily enough, I actually come from a technical background, even though I said there's plenty of people coming with non-technical backgrounds. I did a degree in computing science, and I think I knew pretty early on that I wanted to work with data. I knew that I was quite interested in the whole side of analysis, data manipulation, and all sorts. And over the last 9 months in my role, I've got the core technical skill set that I need, but I'm really trying to find a way to apply that with the tools that we use on a day-to-day basis, the way we work with clients, because I think it's a completely different context, even if I do have those core skills. And Taylor, I think I'll let you introduce yourself. I'll give you that privilege.
I am muted. Hey, thank you, Abby. You know how much I love talking about myself. Hi, guys. I'm Taylor. I'm a data engineer at the same company as Abby. I'm at Quorum, again, based in Edinburgh, Scotland. Nothing new there. I've been in the industry for about going on 4 years now. I'm currently a data engineer. I'm a bit further in my career in Abby, and I've got I've found my niche. I know data engineer / architecture is really where my calling is. But prior to that, I was a data scientist, touched on that for a few months, and a data analyst as well as with a BI developer mixed in there. So I've really spanned quite an area within the data industry, trying to find where I'm going to fit in, and I found engineering is my calling. But I didn't really start out. Again, I wasn't a barber like Chris, but I didn't do something IT / data related like Abby at university. I actually did a degree in actuarial science, which is insurance and pensions. And if you've ever worked in that area, you can have your own opinions, but my opinion is it was quite boring and it wasn't for me, which is why I made that jump to data. And so I'm going to flash myself back to about 4 years ago, to when I actually first started looking for a role. And that's actually how a lot of juniors start, is how do they find a role? How are roles being found just overall within the data industry? And there's a few different ways that roles are being found. First off, there's internships. Internships are actually a really, really great way for a junior to test the water. If they're a bit unsure if they want to go into the data industry, they can get an internship for a few months and see if it's something that they're enjoying, if that's where their calling is. But it's also a great way for a senior. If a senior member of the data industry is a bit uncertain whether, oh, should I take a junior on because I don't want to, I may not have the responsibility at the time, take an intern on and see over the next few months, see if you've got that time to tutor them, mentor them. And hopefully by the end of it for the junior, a permanent role might be waiting, but who knows? Another way is similar to Chris, is just word of mouth. We've got a great data community here, and the data industry the data industry is really friendly. So you've always got those relationships where you can reach out and go, oh, by the way, I'm looking for a job. Do you know anywhere that's hiring? Oh yeah, my mate over there is hiring. I'll put you in touch. And you make that match that way. It's a really, really powerful way. Next up is, I think everybody has experience with these guys, recruiters. Their job is to go hunting for the perfect candidate for a role. Senior members of staff, you give them a little menu of like these are the ingredients that I want. This is the kind of person I want for the job. Go find me that person. And recruiters go nipping at people's heels and wanted to grab you. And they do open up that opportunity. That's actually how I found one. My current role at Quorum was via recruiter. And the last one is, I think, one of the more powerful ones, especially within the data community, and that's conferences. Again, we've got a virtual conference right now. There's in-person conferences. They're fabulous. They're great at what they do. It's a great way to meet others in the community, get those conversations with the juniors and seniors, having those casual conversations, getting to know each other. And again, it leads to building that network, and it leads to sort of word of mouth contacts as well. So it's really, really powerful. However, we're going to flash it back to me, because it's all about me, obviously. When I first started looking for a role, again, I was fresh out of uni with an actuarial degree. I didn't have data to my name. So internships, I didn't really know what was out there. I wasn't really aware that there would be data internships, and I think they can be quite rare. I think there should be a bit more opportunity for that, but at the time it felt quite rare. So we can whack that one off the list. Word of mouth, I didn't know anybody in the data community. Nobody knew me. Like I said, I'm a fresh junior. I've not been to any conferences, nothing like that. Nobody knows who I am. So word of mouth is completely useless to a junior like me. Recruiters, like I said, I'm fresh, I'm new, I've got no experience. I'm not really going to look appetizing to recruiters, because it's probably unlikely compared to, say, someone with even a month's experience within data, or with a degree in data, or even a lovely certificate like Chris. They're probably going to look a bit more appealing than a person like me that's coming fresh out of uni. So that one can get whacked off as well. And then conferences. I at the time I had no idea data had conferences. I'm so glad I know about them now, but at the time, no idea. So that one can fly away as well. So what does that leave me with? I think I did what anybody out there really does when they're looking for a job, and it's job adverts, job search websites. You go into Google, you search, I'm looking for a job, and at times you'll get pointed to some website that will fulfill that. And that's exactly what I did. I went into a job search website. I went into the little keyword box that I typed in big capital letters. I want a job in data. Please give me a job in data. And again, I put it to all UK because I just wanted a job. I didn't want to refine it down any further. I just want a job in data. And I think the word I could describe was very, very overwhelmed. As Abby mentioned before, 2019 was actually about the time I was looking, and as the study says, there was about 200,000 roles out there that were being advertised. So you can see how overwhelming it could be. But the number of roles isn't what was overwhelming. It was all these different job titles that was involving data. And thinking about it now, and we did a bit of research, me and Abby, we put them in these three distinct groups. And the first group is just the cream of the crop, data engineer, data analyst, BI developer, like cream of the crop, to the point. These are the foundations of data that if any role that you're currently in within data, you could probably point them towards one of these. Even a junior like me with no idea what the data industry is like, I understood what these roles were. So these are very basic, the ideology of data. Next up tends to be roles that were a bit buzzwordy. Again, data's at the boom at the moment, and what's helping that boom is data science. And what's behind data science is the likes of models and artificial intelligence and image recognition, all of that fun stuff. And so a lot of job titles are using these sort of buzzwords like artificial intelligence or AI. I'm going to say AI because less of a tongue twister, or modeler or data science. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, what we did find was a lot of these places that use these job titles, if you actually read the description, they don't actually relate. So there's again, data science is on the boom. So it's a buzzword, they're grabbing you. But when you actually read the description, you're like, you will be involved in moving data from A to B and running these programs or whatever. And you're like, well, that sounds more like a data engineer, not really a data scientist. So you have to be really careful with the role you're applying for, have an understanding with the description and how it relates. Don't get suckered into that black hole, because I have. And the last group is job titles that were a bit vague, but on the same side, also very, very precise and a bit confusing. So vague being analyst or engineer. I'm like, yep, okay, thank you. Just add the word data to the start of that and it'll be perfect. Because analyst could be anything, engineer could be a mechanical engineer for all I know. We're just going by the job title, what will draw you in, and just seeing the word engineer or analyst doesn't really draw that in. But you also get the really very confusing job titles, visualization and automation analyst. As a junior, I'm reading that and I go, I have no clue what that is. So I'm just going to scroll right past that one. That just sounds a bit too fancy for me. AI supervisor. Okay, that sounds like I'm going to be watching over the Terminators. I'm not entirely sure. So again, I'll just scroll past that one. It sounds a bit too much responsibility to protect John Connor, really. So we'll move on from that. And these are just the kind of roles that are actually being advertised. That you can see how it can be a bit overwhelming for someone fresh junior, because just the number of job titles out there, and we've probably not even scratched the surface with these 20 or so that you see on the screen right now. There's probably hundreds more out there. So that's just giving an idea of what it's like to be a junior. And I know, Abby, you've had a similar experience when you were looking for a role.
Yeah, totally, Taylor. So I finished my degree and I knew I wanted a job in data, similar to myself. I think it's quite surprising. I think both of us did the exact same thing. We went to a job search website. We just looked for jobs in data because we didn't know where we wanted to go in data. And every single job role you're seeing on screen right now, we haven't made any of these up. When we came together to write this talk, Taylor and I went onto the job search website. We typed in the word data, similar to how we did maybe a couple of years ago. And every single role that you see here was actually being advertised for at the time. And there's a couple there that, yeah, as Taylor said, just make absolutely no sense. And it makes it so much more confusing for someone that is fresh to the industry and doesn't really know what sort of role you can have in data. As an example, yeah, I was about halfway through an interview for a job as a data operations executive. At the time, I thought, data operations, that sounds cool. What am I? I'm an executive of data operations. It's got a lot of weight to the job title, and the job description a little more vague. It was just talking about maintaining data, talking about how are they working with the data that they hold. In reality, I found out that it was just maintaining their Excel spreadsheets that they had for events planning and any other sort of admin that they did around the company. And I thought that's really not what I want to be doing. I think the interviewer said to me at some point, I think she said, "Your degree in computing science, you're way overqualified for this role." And I think I agreed, and I had to leave that application there. And there was another application I did. It was for a visualization analyst at a construction company. I thought visualization could be really cool. I'll try my hand at that, see what data visualization is all about. I kind of know what it is. Got to about page 7 out of 15 of the application form, and all the questions they'd asked me to that point were just about construction. I hadn't been asked a single question about my technical capabilities. And I just knew straight away that it wasn't going to be a fit for me because it was asking me what my niche in construction was going to be. Like, I'm not even going to begin to try and describe what it was asking me. But at the time, I was thinking, I'm trying to think what my niche in data is going to be. Do I want to be a data engineer? Do I want to be a DBA? Do I want to become a data scientist? And I think, as Taylor mentioned, all of this can be really overwhelming to someone that's coming into the industry fresh. And I think there's two sides of the coin here. If, as a junior, if you're looking for these roles, yeah, you've got to have an understanding of what you're applying for because you've got to do your homework when you're going for the interview and the further steps of the job. But as a senior, as someone that's hiring for a company, you've got to make sure that you're attracting the right sort of people. If you're looking for a DBA, advertise for a DBA. I've seen data scientists advertised, but all they're looking for is ETL, which is the job of a data engineer. So I think without going into too much detail, Taylor and I thought it'd be a really good idea to talk to you about how we think a really well balanced data team can be split into 5 different areas, 5 different sort of pillars, for lack of a better term, because we feel that it'll really help kind of bring context to it. And we're not saying it's the gold standard of how a team in data should be working, how a data consultancy should be structured. We've seen it work, and I think it's a really good way for us to sort of think about our goals and where we want to go in our careers next. So you've got to start off with, you've got your data architecture and strategy. This is where you're thinking about where's your data coming from, where's it going, how are you working with your data. This is where modeling comes into play. This is where things like governance, thinking about compliance, this is where all of that's brought under the umbrella of architecture and strategy and a lot more. I'm barely going to scratch the surface of what any of these job roles will actually require on a day-to-day basis. You then got your database administration. I think, again, I'm going to be a little cheeky here. I think a lot of the senior members of the industry that we've spoken to, and they've said it themselves, so I have no worries about saying it here. I do apologize, however. A lot of people in the industry that are a bit more senior, they've got 30 years of experience, they've got big beards, few grey hairs maybe. You'll find that they've worked as a DBA at some point, or they still are in that DBA niche because it's such a valuable skill set. It's a discipline, it's a mindset of how you're working with data and how you're building your databases and your wider infrastructure in data. This is where you're thinking about your query tuning, you're thinking about performance optimization, you're thinking about how your databases, how your queries affect the hardware that they're sitting on. And people might think that it doesn't really transfer over to the cloud. It's quite old fashioned. It's quite the opposite because it's a lot of that mindset that comes into play when you're working with the cloud as well, where you're thinking about how much your resources are you using? Are you really efficiently getting the most out of what you're paying for, essentially, in the cloud? You've then got your data movement and migration. This is the core of data engineering. When I say data engineering, you're building pipelines to extract, transform, and load data into a different place. You're moving data from point A to point B. You're thinking about transformations. Are you thinking, do you need to cleanse that data a little? Do you need to get rid of the bad stuff? You want to keep the good data because once you've got the good data, there's a whole range of things that you can do with it, such as business intelligence. This is the shiny reports, the shiny dashboards. This is what companies will pay thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. I don't even want to think about the number that gets poured into having good business intelligence because it's so valuable. It's so key for people to be making their high level decisions. This is what the CEOs, the executives rely on to just get an overview of what's going on in their business without getting into too much detail. And then you've got your data science, your machine learning, your AI. These are really hot right now. I think everybody can't stop talking about ChatGPT and so on. And this is when you're thinking about, you know, what more can you get out of your data? This is where you're thinking about predictive models, regression. There's so many different concepts within machine learning, as Taylor mentioned earlier. You've got image recognition. There's so many applications for AI and machine learning within data right now. And yeah, we really feel that all of these have a part to play in a team that's working with data on a day-to-day basis. And although they stand separately as five different areas, five different pillars, we actually quite we were talking about this, we felt there's actually a lot of impact that each area has on something else. They really all sort of come together, they all melt together in a way when you're thinking about the knowledge that you want to build up within data. You can't have data migration, data movement without a good data architecture and strategy. You can't be building these sort of systems without a proper infrastructure. And as I said, you can't build BI and data science on top of data that hasn't been properly cleansed or stored correctly. And it really comes into having a knowledge of how each of these areas work. As a junior, when you're coming into the industry, you might know already what you want to go into. I think Chris, we mentioned earlier, knew that he wanted to work in BI. You've got myself where, I'm young, I'm fresh into the industry. I have a degree, but I'm still wanting to learn everything that I can. I want to learn absolutely everything there is in all of these areas all at once. And I'm just raring to go. But I need to pull myself back a bit. I need to think about what specifically can I be doing with each of these areas. And it comes into, there was a really good term that stuck with me when I was chatting to a senior member of staff, senior member of the community at a conference last year, at a data conference. I was literally just 1 month into the job, and I was talking about how, with a computing science degree, I've came into this industry. I've got skills such as, programming languages, concepts. I've worked with Python, for example, and I know that Python's really sort of a key factor in how people are working with data science right now. People love to use Python for things like TensorFlow and all the other libraries that you can have working with AI. And I said, I've got these skills, and I'm actually quite happy to learn whatever I can. It's quite interesting to see how the industry's changed in how there's so many different things you're trying to sort of keep up with. And what he said to me was, he said, and again, as I said, people have said it about themselves, the seniors in the industry. He said, guys like me, we came into the industry a little while ago now, we'll have one thing that we've held on to and we've kind of rode it all the way to success. And that's where we're kind of building our niches on. Whereas the juniors that come into the industry now, they've got fresh perspectives. They've got knowledge of everything. They want to do everything. They've got, Python, yeah, easy as anything. I know how to work with Python. And he said, people that are places that are hiring for people, you're really looking for people that are T-shaped. And when I say T-shaped person, I mean sort of you've got your horizontal overview of sort of all the areas of data that you're working in, but you've still got that one vertical line of the T that's really down in your niche where you're working in data. And just to visualize that for you on the screen here, we had a quick think about it. We thought when you're working as a DBA, this is what your T is going to look like. You're going to have the big section, the vertical section, your niche, you're rooted in database administration. But that doesn't mean you're not thinking about any other area of data. You've still got to think about the infrastructure side of things. There's a lot of impact on reporting when you're working as a DBA, and you've got to think about what the business is doing on that side of things. Contrasting to that, this is the T of a data engineer. You're rooted in thinking about the ETL, the movement of migration, but this is where architecture has a really important role to play. And whatever you're doing with the data, it goes on to become the BI in data science. And that's where you've really got to be thinking about all these areas. And I think the point of bringing that up is that we feel that as a senior, as you get further along in your career, as you're developing, what we want to say to you is, yeah, you've got to have a knowledge of what all these things mean, especially when it comes to managing a team. You've got to be able to step into any of these areas and understand what your team's doing with them, no matter what. I think that's compulsory. But as a junior coming into the industry, when Taylor and I were looking for jobs in data, we really found that, you might know where you want to go into, you might not know where you want to go into, but it's still really handy to just understand what each of these areas mean and how they link up to job roles that you're finding on the job websites. Because I think straight away for me, anyway, it really put into context, what a data engineer actually is on a day-to-day basis. What is BI? What does a BI consultant do on a day-to-day basis? So I think at that point, I think, Taylor, we've talked a little bit about, how jobs are being found in the data industry right now. We're talking about, what makes a good job advert, what what really helps people understand what a job advert is looking for, and what helps people look for the people that are the gaps they're wanting to fill in the team. But I think there is, and obviously none of this is groundbreaking, none of this is brand new. I think people have been to plenty of interviews, have looked for plenty of job adverts, but that's just our perspective on what it's looking like in the industry at the moment. But I think there's one key step, Taylor, that you still need to, I think everyone still has to go through before they actually get into a job, which I think I'll pass back over to you to talk about.
Yeah, it's every junior's nightmare. It's the interview, which can sound very daunting and scary for a lot of people, especially as a junior that is fresh into the industry. You're gonna have, no matter how you found the role or how you communicate, whether it's via word of mouth, job adverts, or conferences or anything like that, you're always going to lead you to the interview. The first time you're going to meet face to face with the junior to the senior. And I'm going to say, instead of saying interviewee and interviewer, because I'm not good at tongue twisters, I'm going to say senior and junior. So I'm just going to talk a bit about my experiences over the last 4 years with being sort of a junior and how I've progressed with interviews after the many that I've done. So going back to when I first graduated, I handed my CV out to everybody, and lo and behold, I did get interviews. And the one interview that I really remember back then was the interview for the job that I actually got. I traveled I was about 4 hours on the train down south, but into England for this interview. And I remember on the train ride, I was just thinking, I want to impress them. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be awesome. They're going to love me, love me, love me, love me. I'm going to be awesome. And went to the interview. I was in the interview, and that was exactly what I did. I could not care less what they were telling me. I was just like, hire me, please, hire me. I need a job, please. And that seemed to pay off because I got the job, thankfully. So no complaints there. However, actually, once I was in that role, I realized I kind of made a mistake. This role was not for me. It didn't have the development capability. It didn't have my career sort of planned out. I couldn't see my career really going anywhere. So I had to go and rethink that. So I was there for about a year and a half. And then I thought, right, no, I'm going to look elsewhere. I need to find the right job for me. And that's when I realized interviews are actually really powerful on both sides of the table. It's not senior members of staff trying to trip you up, trying to see if you're worthwhile. You have to also ask, as a junior, is this the right role for me? So I switched my mentality, and I'm going into interviews now being like, okay, I better love you. Okay, you need to love me. I get that, but I need to love you as well. So it's having that mutual respect. And that's exactly what I did. And it actually took me about 3 to 4 months to find a role because I switched that mentality. I was wanting to find the right job. There's a few interviews that stood out. There was one interview where the senior member of staff said to me, he put me down, he said a few things that I was sort of brushed under the table. I was like, okay. And then what really kicked the curb was he said to me, Taylor, if we hired you, you'd be a wild card, by the way. You've not really got the experience. We don't think you're good enough, but please tell us why you think you're gonna be great. And I just thought, the instant he said that, I was like, you've put me down twice already. This is the third time you've put me down in the interview. We're 20 minutes in. So clearly this is not the culture that I want to be with. So I made that decision to back out of that one. There's another instance where I was in the interview, they're talking about this system that they use, this very niche system on whatever they use. I can't remember the name of it. And that's all they ever worked on. So after the interview, I did a bit of research. What's this system? I've never heard of it before. I did a bit of research, and I realized this system's only used for this very niche point of I think it was construction as well, construction industry. And I realized, well, there's no career opportunity there. Yes, I could become the professional in this one system, but in terms of data as a whole, I'm not going to be branching out using these cool tools like ChatGPT or anything like that. So I rejected that because it was not for me. It did not have that career propulsion that I was looking for. And luckily, I'll jump to the good news that I found Quorum, where I'm currently at, and the interview went well. It ticked all the boxes, and they had that career development for me, the personal development, and they saw that I could bring something to them as well. So yay, got the job. So I've been at Quorum for about 2 years, and I've been given the opportunity to sit on the other side of the table. I'm given the interviews now. I've got the power. And luckily I interviewed this one gentleman called Jayanty, who sat here with us today. And this is actually the first time we ever met. And thanks to me, he now has a job. So he has to thank me all the time for that. And his interview really stuck out because he sits on his high horse whenever we've rehearsed this, but his interview was the perfect example of what a junior interview should be like. The first question I asked was, why data? Why do you enjoy data? Why do you want a career in data? And that's when Abby did what Abby does. He started talking about F1. And I was sat there like, I hate F1, but sure, let's go with it. Okay, big red cross over this at the moment. But you could see he was passionate about it. He brought in, and then how it evolved into data. He was talking about how, different tire pressures in the tire changes the time around the track, and it was all exciting. I was like, that's actually pretty cool. I'll give you that. And how you can stream the data live from a race and analyze it. So he's bringing his passion of F1, and that grew on his passion of data. So he was passionate about data. That was ticking the first box for me. Next up was he was talking about his dissertation. And this is a perfect example. Again, juniors out there, and again, seniors, it's something you're going to look for and you're going to have to do anyway. Present something you've done before. Present some code or a dashboard or something. Abby presented his dissertation. It was very well written for what it was. I'll give him that. I personally suck at writing dissertations, but his was actually very well written. He was presenting it. Soft skills tick. He was ticking that box. And he was talking about how the systems he used, the coding he used, all of that stuff. So technical skills tick. So he's ticking those mandatory boxes I don't think you can avoid. But the thing that sticks out most about Abby's interview was just how much fun we were having. An interview shouldn't be scary, shouldn't be daunting, shouldn't be stressful. It's a conversation. You're just seeing if you're fit for each other. You need to have fun. And I think that really shows with me and Abby that, we clicked on that interview and here we are. I think we're friends, Abby. I don't know what you think, but yeah. So just have fun in the interview. Have that mutual respect. It's a conversation. You're not trying to trip each other up. You're just wanting to see if you're fit for each other. It shouldn't be scary. It's just trial and error. So just to give a quick recap on just the main points I think stick out within interviews is that everybody's making decisions within an interview, whether it's during the interview or afterwards. Juniors, you're making decisions whether you want to go for this job. Is this job right for me? Seniors, you're thinking, is this junior right for the company? Are they going to help develop our team? Passion. Show you're passionate. Juniors, show you're passionate about data. If you're passionate about data, that shows you want to grow, you want to pursue your career. And seniors, show you're passionate about teaching these juniors. If you're going to sit there with like a brick wall and show no interest, the junior's going to see that and go, how's this guy going to train me? Show you're passionate about wanting to teach this junior. Soft skills, technical skills, juniors, you're not going to avoid that. That was just for you. You're never going to really avoid that. Show that in an interview. It's not just a conversation. You do need to show how good you are, so show those skills. But most importantly, have fun. The interview should be fun. I remember my first lot of interviews were very stressful, but that 3 to 4 month block, I became more myself. I had more fun with it, and it really helps understand whether you're going to be a fit for each other. So I'm going to hand over back to Abby, who's going to talk about how great he was in that interview and how thankful he is. So Abby, go ahead.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when we said that we were going to be talking about ourselves in this talk, I think obviously pat on the back for each of us. But yeah, I think that's what we're doing here. We're just talking about our personal experiences and how we've experienced these things, like looking for a job and looking at being in an interview. Because I think it's such a simple topic. It's so easy to just say, show off your homework, show off your soft skills, do this, do that. We didn't want to give you a bullet point list of how to ace an interview. We thought if we give you our stories of how we've been in interviews through our career, through a very short, the short span of our career so far, I think that's how we've viewed interviews. And again, that's what we hope that everyone can take away from this talk. It's just a little it's a fresh perspective, something that you maybe didn't think about in an interview before, because it's very rare. I love Formula One. Give me the chance. I will talk about Formula One. I will take up the rest of this schedule today talking about Formula One if I need to. But it shows that I've got that passion for something. It doesn't even need to be something specific in data. Just passionate about something, just a sport. And it happens to be that Formula One is the most data-driven sport of all the sports. Again, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole at all. But that other key point that I really want to sort of take forward is having fun in the interview, because you're not just talking to this. If you hire them, you're not talking to the person for an hour and that's it. You're talking to them for a week, 2 weeks, however long you're working alongside each other, however long you stay at that company or they stay at that company. That span of your career is going to be spent working beside this person. I hate to break it to you, you're going to see them Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, all the time. And I think, yeah, Taylor and I, we came out pretty well after the interview. I think we clicked quite well. And thankfully, I think that's why we're here delivering this session. I think that comes across quite well. But yeah, it's that point. You're hiring them. You've got to see them. You're responsible for them now. As a senior, you've hired this junior. What are you going to do with them now? As a junior, you've got to prove that you've got what it takes to stay in that job. Because it's not just about what we've talked until now. It's not just about how to get the job. I think that's a pretty easy talk to deliver. I think where we really think that we are going to bring the value here, myself and Taylor, is how you actually keep the job and how you progress in the job, both as a junior, what you need to be doing to kind of take those steps that you might not have thought about before, but also as a senior, what are you doing in your company, within your team to sort of build this culture around learning, around development? Because I think that's something that's really benefited Taylor and myself. And I think this is really like the key part of the session that we want to talk about, where we think that juniors are really bringing the value into a data team and a data consultancy and a wider technical company. As Taylor said, it's not just in data, it's not just in technical industries. Juniors are everywhere and they're going to continue to be everywhere. Everyone has to be a junior at some point. And I think a really good way is probably just to give you a little story about how my first week on the job went at Quorum, because I found that it's maybe not the traditional first week on the job for everyone. You know, everyone's a little nervous. I was really kind of raring to go. I wanted to learn everything, as I said. I was chatting with my boss, you know, the 5 pillars that I talked to you earlier. Spoiler alert, they're not an original Abbey creation. I did kind of steal them, and I know that my boss got them from somewhere else as well, because yeah, they're quite commonly the areas of data that you'll work with. And we were talking about each area. We were discussing, you know, how you can go about working with a data platform and build solutions. And on the architecture piece, governance was a term that I'd never heard before. Somehow, I understood what the concept was. I just never heard it referred that way. And I think the look on my senior's face is the look on my boss's face when I was actively asking about what governance is. I think it was quite shocked, quite surprised, because I think for some reason people seem to think that governance is a really dry topic and people can tend to zone out when you start talking about governance. But I think it's such an important part of working with data anyway. And I know that might be a bit of a controversial opinion. For all I know, everyone here could love governance and data architecture. So I think I'll move on from that before I ruffle any feathers. But what gave me the opportunity there was I said, I want to learn more about governance. And I had a senior that I could sit down with. I could sit down with our data architect and just chat about, you know, what are the tools? What can we do to work with governance? You know, you've got things on each platform. For Azure, you've got things like Purview. For Databricks, I think there's a governance tool there that you can use as well. Just so many examples across the board on any platform that you're working with. And it was that openness that I had and the openness that the senior had with me to just take time out and just sit down and chat with me about a topic that I didn't know about. And I knew straight away that that's something that would continue whenever I had a question about anything. I knew that I could go to someone and ask them what to do. And especially the fact that it was my first week, you know, I had all the jobs, you know, any first week on the job, you're going to be doing work that you might not want to be doing, the kind of the menial tasks, the grunt work. But you've still got this opportunity to just start to think about where you want to be progressing, where you want to be going in your job. Taylor, I know that your first week on one of your jobs wasn't really that positive. I know that you were kind of left a little out of your depth.
Yeah, my previous role, I think it shows night and day to what I think should be done. Because I remember at my previous role, the 2 words I'd describe it was lost and confused, because I don't think I spoke to a senior member of staff for the first 3 days. I didn't know what systems they were using, what coding languages. I didn't know what to sort of where I was going, really, and I just left to my own devices. And so I was just very lost, confused, and I didn't really know what to do for the first week. So I was quite frightened, to be honest. But that's just a bad experience from my point of view. But like you said, Abby, you've got a great experience, and same with mine at Quorum. It's a perfect first week. But back to you.
Yeah, I'm not saying that every single company is going to have very bad first weeks for the juniors. People might have a brilliant induction pack in for people. You know, you might know exactly what to do with a junior when they're coming into your company with no background. But I know for a fact that there are companies out there that maybe don't have that culture around sort of shaping these juniors that are coming in. You're shaping people that are coming in with no experience, not only of, you can have someone that's completely experienced coming into a new job at your company, and they just might not have the knowledge required for something that is your niche, something that you rely on quite heavily to have that knowledge of. And I think it really comes into the kind of personal development, the learning part of any job. I think it's not a really kind of brand new concept to say that everyone needs to be learning constantly. Especially working with the cloud, things change every single day. You can log in tomorrow and there'll be a new button, there'll be a new interface that no one told you was coming, and it's just popped up out of nowhere, and you've got to learn what it does and learn how you can use it. Everyone has their own different ways of keeping up with what's coming out, what's releasing in the tools that they're using. But as a junior, you've got to put the work in, you've got to be learning, and you've got to be making the conscious effort to just learn as much as you can in terms of the area of what you want to be working with, but also how you can be contributing to what your team's doing. You've got things such as, I think Taylor and myself, we found a really good way of putting learning into practice and having something to consolidate our knowledge is certification exams. You've got Microsoft certifications you can do, ones for AWS, Databricks. Every cloud platform, most likely they'll have certifications that you can get, and it's a certificate, it's a piece of paper, it's a little badge that you can show and say, I've learned about what this is, and I know what it does. I'm not saying certifications are the be all and end all of being qualified in a data job, because I know for a fact that there'll be people that have certifications that maybe can't pull the knowledge out of the top of their head straight away when you do ask them something about that topic. I think I'm guilty of that sometimes myself. Sometimes information will come in one ear and go out the other ear. And I think it's such a key part of, it's just that concept of constantly keeping on top of what's new in the industry, what's new with the platforms you're using, what can you be learning? And you've just got to constantly learn, because you're going to see that immediately pay off, both as a junior, where you're showing that, you can provide some worth to this team. But as a senior as well, you've got to keep learning as well. You've got to keep one step ahead of your juniors, if anything, to be able to teach them when it comes to it. And you can tell that, seniors can always learn from juniors as well. Juniors are going to have something that they can sort of bring to the table and say, I know this, you don't know it, but let's talk about it. Let's put it into practice. And you can immediately see how, as not only as an individual, but as a team, you're instantly sort of growing in all areas. You can really sort of become more efficient. You can really build up your offering to clients, to stakeholders within the internal company. You are immediately going to see that success, because it's those fresh perspective. Because I think at any point, it's the term I think a lot of us maybe do experience at some point. It's like imposter syndrome. I think from junior to senior, you're going to see a senior, you're going to be like, how do they know all these things? I don't know any of that. I've got to be working with that tool. I've got to be working with that platform. I'm not that comfortable doing the coding that's required for this platform. As a senior, I think I'd be pretty spot on to say that I think no matter how experienced you are, there are still things that can catch you out a little bit, and things that you do maybe struggle to get your head around straight away. I don't think I'm sort of speaking out of line there at all. And I know that, I think Taylor, you had an example of how, as a junior, you came into the team at Quorum. You maybe identified the part that was maybe a little weaker that we could be working on. It's not something that we weren't doing before, but I think you had an idea of how we could take it a little further.
Yeah, when we were working on this project, we had to use DevOps and deploying from development to test to production. And when actually putting it to practice, I was brand new concept to me. I'd never used DevOps, and I was a bit confused. So I went to my senior member of staff, and he's like, "Okay, I think this is how you do it." And I was asking a bit more technical questions, and he sort of mentioned, I know how to do it, but I'm not the professional. I'm not the expert on the system. And I was like, that's fair enough. Well, clearly, I think DevOps is a really powerful tool, so we really need to teach someone up on it. And that's what the team did. Is that I think a few months later, we've now got someone on the team who's, I wouldn't say sole responsibility, but they're taking it upon themselves to sort of learn up on DevOps, train it up, and they'll become the expert on the system, and they'll then share that knowledge within the team, and then allowing the team to grow along with themselves. So it's a yin and yang. You're benefiting yourself as well as benefiting the team. So that's just a real world example that's happening within our team right now.
Yeah, totally. And it's we're not saying that juniors have great ideas all the time, because they'll bring ideas in that immediately is never going to work in a realistic sense in terms of thinking about that consultancy sort of mindset. I've made the mistake before where I thought we could use this brand new thing, and then immediately I had to remind myself that I'm not working with, mock data that I was using in university. I'm working with real client data now, and I've got to have that sort of mindset towards it. But it's that openness of a junior and a senior. You're building that bond within a team where you can go to them, you can really easily talk to them about something that you think will really benefit not only yourselves as individuals, but the team as a whole. And as sappy as it sounds, as sentimental as it sounds, you're building sort of a bond or building a relationship within your team. You're going to enjoy working alongside these juniors, these kind of the people in your team. I think everyone has someone that they really enjoy working with. When you move on to different jobs, you'll miss them or whatever, but still, you've still got the bond there. You see each other at conferences. We've got a fantastic community, the data community worldwide. It still blows my mind as to how friendly everyone and kind everyone is in the community. And that's where you're bringing back in that word of mouth, because for a fact at a conference you've met somebody, you got along with them really friendly, maybe over a drink, maybe over like a pub quiz night or whatever. And you're thinking that person he knows his stuff. They know their stuff on this area. We should bring them in. We should give them a job. And I know for a fact that that's how a lot of people have been hired at companies in a lot of places. So I think, Taylor, to start to wrap things up, I think we've made some pretty good points, if I don't say so myself, on using our personal experiences to just give that perspective of what it's like as a junior to try and get a job in data these days, but also what we've seen, what's worked for us, and what we think seniors should be doing to really engage with their juniors and develop them and bring them up to where they need to be in their career going forward. But I think it'd be really helpful maybe if we just summarize it, just put it into some key bullet points on the screen right now. I think, do you want to maybe just sum it all up for the people here?
Yeah, I think there's the question on everybody's mind, which is why junior? Why should you hire a junior over someone that's got maybe a bit more experience and is a bit more expert in their field? And I think that's the question on everybody's mind. So I'm just going to whack through a few points and hopefully we'll get the point across. So a junior they're very moldable. I've taught with a lot of seniors that I've talked with. People with a bit more experience can be a bit set in their ways, but with a junior, they're fresh, they don't know anything, they want to learn everything. So you're able to mold a junior into what you need them to be, what you want them to be, but also as a senior, you have to take that responsibility and actually mold them into what they need to be as well. You have to use that responsibility. You're their trainer, point them in the direction that is right for them. A junior is not going to show up on your doorstep and be perfect. You have to put the effort in, and it's an investment. You put the effort in, you're going to get that reward back. And that is exactly what we mean by moldable. Take them under your wing, point them in the directions that you need them to be, and they will fill that if you've chosen the right passionate junior. Next up, we've touched on it, fresh ideas. Juniors, they're fresh, they're new, they're coming in with new perspectives. They've maybe learned on some new techniques, played with the new toys like ChatGPT. So they're coming in with this fresh perspective, not having that number of years experience where it could have tainted their opinions on a few things. Again, not everything they're going to say is going to be brilliant, but all it takes is say one idea where you sit back and go, I've never thought of that way. And a junior can really bring that. And now to the really tacky and sappy side as a senior. Juniors are the future. They're not going anywhere. If you don't hire a junior, the junior will get a job elsewhere. That is just a fact, really. And it's really up to the senior. If you train these juniors up, if you take them under your wing, and however many years of your career you could train up maybe 20 juniors, you've left your mark on the data community, data industry. For me, if I was a senior and I retired and I left and I went and did my own little thing, I would be really proud of myself to know that I've actually trained up these juniors. I gave them the opportunity. I taught them. I trained them up to see where they are now and where they are in the data community. You would have pretty much left your mark within the data community, data industry. And I think that's a really powerful thing. Well, in my opinion, if I know that when I get a bit more experience, that's one of the main reasons that I'm going to be taking juniors under my wing and training them up, just so I know that I've made that impact on someone else's life. And I don't know if there's any other points, Abby. Is there any other reasons that a junior is great?
Yeah, I mean, you've made really good points so far. I totally agree with you. You know, moldable, a junior's a fresh slate, a blank slate. You can bring them in, you can mold them into whatever they want to be, but over also what you need for your team. You know, they've got the fresh ideas, they're raring to go, they're willing to learn, they're passionate if they've done all the right things to that point. And as you said, Taylor, juniors aren't going anywhere. We are the future. I think it sounds quite threatening to say it that way, but I think it's a fact that we are going to be in this industry for a while, hopefully, and we really do want to progress and we really do have that passion to go further. But as a senior, when you're looking to hire people, I think for your company, if you're needing people to fill the gap in your company, I'm going to give you one really good reason that blows everything out the water. I think it's a fantastic reason that should be at the top of your list. Juniors are cheap. It's always going to be cheaper to hire someone that doesn't have experience, and then you can build them up into whatever they need to be. You're always going to have to pay a little more to get someone that demands that sort of higher level of experience, and they think what they think brings to your company. But jokes aside, you know, it's a fact. I know it sucks to hear as a junior as well. That's the reason you've been hired. It's not the reason you've been hired. As a junior, if you're coming into a company, you're there to really leave your mark and prove your worth. And as a senior, you've hired this person because you really do think that they have that willingness to learn. And that's what we think really sort of brings everything together. And that's why we do think that junior data professionals are the key to every data team success. It's not just a catchy title. It's what we really think you can really unlock something in your team by bringing in someone that has this perspective and has that sort of the willingness to really grow your team and succeed, because it's only going to show benefits. I don't think there's much else that we can say on the topic, to be fair, to Taylor. But yeah, I think take a chance on your juniors, take a chance and see where it goes, because I think it's worked out pretty well for us so far. And I'm excited to see where it goes next for our team and for ourselves as individuals.
Yes, definitely. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for listening. Yeah, thank you for Ben and William, all the organising team of New Stars Data for giving us this experience. Thanks to Robert French, our mentor, and people in the company that really encouraged us to kind of take this step and become kind of speakers in the community. I guess if there's any questions, we're happy to take them now. I know we went a little over, but I think we've still got a few minutes for questions.